avert your mind from it. Stop ruminating. Stop ruminating. You're making yourself crazy. Especially, there are different personality types, but if you're like me and you're an introspective, deep thinker, and it's like almost like your default setting is brooding, right? So it can be very dangerous to be encouraged to become super, super attentive and aware of your feelings. I'm saying it can be. It can become a preoccupation, which is not healing. It is not cathartic. It's actually getting you more and more mired in it. Hey there. How are you doing?
Doing well. Long-time listener, first-time caller. Thanks for taking me.
We've been on the air long enough, I guess, now where where people get to say that. This is our 6th show, by the way.
Right.
So, okay. Anyways, what's up?
Okay. So I've, in recent times, I've started to go through like my own healing journey, working with therapists, trying to heal some old wounds. And one of the things that I'm learning about is the value of like accepting the full spectrum of human emotion. Mm-hmm. And there's kind of like these unwritten rules that we all abide by, that sadness and anger are undesirable. When someone's sad, we want to cheer them up. When someone's angry, it's a tantrum, we got to calm them down. Mm-hmm. And especially with kids. And then what I'm learning is that like when a child is in an environment like this, with patterns and on a constant basis, this can create trauma where they're like repressing their emotions. Mm. And now as an adult, I'm kind of like relearning a lot of this about how to accept the value of anger and the value of grief, and like listen to what these emotions are telling me and not run away from them. And the problem that I'm having is like, I'm having trouble reconciling this with concepts that I've learned in Judaism, where it sounds like Judaism has strong opinions that some emotions are very undesirable. Like anger, chaos is called like serving idols, and atzvos is like really problematic. And, my son comes home and he has a lot of pride because something sad happens and he didn't cry. And I'm like, this sounds really bad, because like for me, when a child is sad or he's grieving or angry, like I don't want to change any, like I'm not looking to fix it. I'm looking to like be there with him. And we were like reading the section in the Weiss edition. It's like a Tanya book for kids. And there's like a little blurb. It's called "Keep It In," and I'm quoting. It says, "Our Chacham tell us it's best not to speak when you're angry, as doing so will make you feel even angrier." And I'm just that I haven't had that experience at all in my life. Every time I've been very emotionally vulnerable, especially in my relationship with my wife, it's always been positive, even if these are very difficult things, and like allowing space for us to be angry, to be sad, and using that as a tool in a therapeutic sense to like heal old wounds. So I have a couple of my own theories about how to reconcile this, but I wanted to ask about it from someone like who has kind of feet in both worlds, but also, has like expertise and authority and like halacha. Like, how do I reconcile these, what seems to be a contradiction of emotional repression versus emotional validation, especially when I see, emotional expression, especially when I see so much positivity for myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to rephrase your question, not because I don't think you expressed yourself eloquently, but because it was a little bit, I'm not sure everyone listening, well, I don't know. And the crowd that we attract, maybe everyone followed it, but I'm thinking maybe some people weren't following exactly, because there's some prerequisite knowledge there. So let me just dumb it down a few notches and say it in a very simple way. You're asking like this: you have found personally, so you're reporting your personal experience, which you can't deny, that learning how to express your feelings has been an important part of achieving emotional health. And yet it seems to you that there are many messages within Torah that encourage what we would call emotional repression, stifling your feelings, stuffing it. And you're trying to, A, reconcile that. And B, as a father, it sounds like maybe there's a little bit of a question here as far as parenting, how to teach this. Especially when there's this seemingly irreconcilable contradiction. So do you agree with am I adequately paraphrasing your question?
Yeah, that's totally fair.
Okay, fine. So interesting. I want to just take exception with one thing that you said, which is that you said to me that I have a foot in both worlds. I want to make something clear, and I said it before, but I'm going to say it again. I am not trained in any modality of therapy. Not only am I not trained in it, I've never even read I shouldn't say never read. My father, may he rest in peace, was a psychologist. And as a kid, I was exposed to a lot of his ideas, and I was exposed at a young age to some therapeutic approaches, certainly not an exhaustive type of, not a systemized nor exhaustive exposure to therapeutic approaches. So I have not read a psychology book in probably 20 years. So I just want to make very, very clear. I probably will say a lot of ignorant things as far as being up to date on certainly modern modalities of therapy, of which I'm certainly ignorant of because I just haven't kept up with it. And not only am I not an expert now, I was never an expert. So I just want to make sure that this disclaimer comes across really, really, really loud and clear, for whatever it's worth. I think it's just for the sake of honesty that I want to convey that. So I guess where I'm coming from is I'm not really trying to reconcile Torah's approach with a modern therapeutic approach. Because I don't have that problem. It's not like I'm immersed in that world where like I feel that tension and I want to make that reconciliation happen. But B, I'm not equipped to do so. I'm really not equipped. And I know people think that I'm like trying to play humble and pretend to be ignorant. I'm not pretending to be ignorant. I really, 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 really am ignorant. So everything I'm saying really is coming from one world. It's coming from the world of Torah, but specifically, and this is my bias and this is my strength, it's coming from Chassidus, and even more narrowly, Chabad Chassidus. Okay, so my understanding of emotional health and the inner workings of the psyche are pretty consistently and entirely based on Chabad Chassidic teachings. I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, so having said all that, my disclaimer is probably going to be longer than my answer itself. There's a sefer, Hayom Yom. The Rebbe, Lubavitcher Rebbe, compiled a book called Hayom Yom. I didn't put this on my desk because I was going to quote it. It's one of the few Sfarim that I always have on my desk. So there's an entry from Hayom Yom. So it says here, Daiga belev ish yashchena. A worry in a man's heart, you should quash it. That's how I'll translate it. And that's actually a verse or part of a verse from Mishlei, from Proverbs, King Solomon's Proverbs, Proverbs 12:25. All right. V'amru Razal, and our sages say, this is actually a Gemara in Yuma 75a, and it's a machlokes amarayim. Sages of the Talmud differ on their exegesis of this word. You know, that's how the Bible works, right? Hebrew is written without vowels, and there are alternate ways of reading the consonants, and the different ways of reading the consonants reveal different truths. And they are Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chaim. These and these are the words of the living God. It's all true. It's all true. There are different perspectives of truth. The infinite wisdom of God is compressed in a finite text called the Bible. And one of the ways that we access the infinity within the finite is through rabbinic exegesis, the process of unpacking multiple alternate layers of meaning contained in a single word. Okay, so it's a machlekes in the Gemara in Yoma, and I think it's Reb Ami and Reb Asi, Chad Omer v'Chad Omer, I believe is the way that it's phrased. Okay, so Shnei Pirushim, two explanations. Yasichano midaitoi, remove it from your mind, or what we call hesech hadas. Hesech hadas means avert your mind from it. And the other says, yisecheno la'achedim, speak it out to others. That's from the word sicha, which means conversation. By the way, there are different words for speech. Amira is one word, dibur is another word, sicha is another word, and they all have different connotations. I saw this in the Pachad Yitzchak in Rav Hutner. I said that all my knowledge of the human psyche is from Chabad Chassidus, so a little bit I dabbled in other sources. The Pachad Yitzchak says that Amira is for conveying information. Dibur is for conveying a command, instructions. Sicha, uniquely, is conversation. It's speaking for the sake of bonding. That's interesting that the Chazal say that an extra degree of sicha was given to women. And before you get all offended by the sexist statement, this is in line with another statement that our sages make about women having bina yeseda, having an extra degree of bina. Bina means elaborative thought or extrapolative thought. So the ability to take one idea and to follow it through with various associations in a stream of consciousness, that's a function of bina, which is also a prerequisite for a flowing sicha conversation. At any rate, so you have this phrase, daiga b'lev ish yashchena, and you have two different interpretations. One is yasechena midaitoi, avert your mind from it, hesach hadas, stop thinking about it, don't think about it. The other is the exact opposite, yisechena la'achedim, speak it out to others, sicha, have a conversation, talk therapy. Uperish Tzemach Tzedek, and the Tzemach Tzedek, the Balatanya's Einikel explained. La'achedim rak beguf. When the Gemara says to others, it means to others who are nominally others. They have another body than your body. Aval mu'chadim itoi imai. However, they're totally united with you. They're not real achedim. They're not real others. Shemargishim es inyone, because they feel your issue. They feel your issue. In other words, okay, there's a lot to unpack here. So first of all, you have two seemingly antithetical approaches, and elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chaim, like I said before. They're both legitimate Torah approaches. So contradiction is part of Torah. My ancestor, the Megala Amukai, said that Moshe Kibul Torah Sinai, Moses, Moshe's Rosh Hashanah is an acronym, Mem Shin He Machlekes Shammai Hillel, the disputes of the schools of Shammai and Hillel. In other words, divergent opinions, I don't like the word opinion, by the way, divergent stances within Torah are not a bug, they are a feature. I'll repeat that. Divergent stances within Torah are not a bug, they are a feature. So context. You have to know what you're talking about in order to understand what aspect of the truth is most practically applicable. The truth cannot be one-dimensional. The truth is emes, aleph, mem, saf. That's the first letter and the last letter, perfectly centered with the middle letter in the middle. In other words, truth is all-inclusive. Truth is the whole picture. If it's a fragment, if it was edited into a manipulative soundbite, it's already not the truth. It's already edited reality TV. and sound bites for the media and the 24-hour news cycle. If it's emes, it's the whole story from the very beginning to the very end and everything in between. So truth is always going to be nuanced. Truth is always going to be paradoxical. It's always going to include contradiction, and that is not a deficiency of truth. That is the hallmark of truth. The question is, however, when you get Newtonian about it and you can't have two things in one place and you can't have one thing in two places, meaning to say halacha means how we're going to go, how we're going to walk with this thing, how we're going to apply it in not quantum reality, but in Newtonian reality. We can't light one more light of the menorah every night and light one less light every night, right? That's also a machlekes Shammai and Hillel. Now, Shammai is not wrong. There's a beautiful truth to the idea of lighting one less light every single night. But we can't do both at the same time. I guess you could have two separate menorahs, but that's, you could have the Ein Lo Davar Sof. We have to have one menorah, and you have to pick one way. So we picked the way of Hillel, even though the way of Shammai is also true. So here's the deal. There is a time and a place for the first explanation of Yasechena Medaitoi, avert your mind from it. As we are becoming more and more aware, a lot of good that the advent of modern therapeutic approaches brought to the world are also offset by inherent not good. And that's the way that klipas noiga, that spiritually neutral things are. Ein tov b'lo ra. So there is a positive side and there's a negative side. The positive side is like what you're talking about, getting it off your chest, processing it, and moving on. However, there's another side of it, which is ruminating and getting immersed in it and getting stuck on it and focusing too much on your problems. And for that, we need to be told, Yasechena Medaitoi, avert your mind from it. Stop ruminating. Stop ruminating. You're making yourself crazy. Especially, there are different personality types, but if you're like me and you're an introspective, deep thinker, and it's like almost like your default setting is brooding, right? So it can be very dangerous to be encouraged to become super, super attentive and aware of your feelings. I'm saying it can be. It can become a preoccupation, which is not healing. It is not cathartic. It's actually getting you more and more mired in it. So there are definitely contexts where we need that very practical tool of being told, stop thinking about your problems. Please go get busy with something productive. You're not going to think your way out of this, but if you go do something productive, ideally for someone else, do some service, do an act of service, or at the very least, take a walk around the block, drink some water, do something. You know what? Maybe you'll feel better. You're not going to talk your way through this, but you can start being a productive person and maybe just getting some blood pumping in your body, and you'll find your problem has passed, okay? And that's a very important tool to have. On the other hand, but the guy calls up a shul, the receptionist answers. He says, is this the receptionist? Yes. Okay. I'm looking for a one-armed rabbi. She says, a what? He says, I'm looking for a one-armed rabbi. She says, why are you looking for a one-armed rabbi? He says, because the rabbi I have now, every time I ask him a question, he answers me. And then a second later, he says, but on the other hand. So I'm looking for a one-armed rabbi. Okay. But on the other hand, Yisechena la'achedim, talk it out. Sometimes you do need to talk it out. Sometimes you do need to talk it out. And averting your mind from it is not going to help because there's something there. And if you don't process it and you don't acknowledge it and you ignore it, it's like when you have, God forbid, a sore on your body. Sometimes just keep living and it'll go away. But sometimes, no, if you don't bring it to a doctor, it's going to get worse. If you have a toothache and you don't go to a dentist, it's going to get worse. I have a couple teeth that got pulled because of that, where I ignored it until it stopped hurting. That's the worst thing. If you ignore it till it stops hurting, that means now they have to do a root canal, or they have to yank the whole thing. You got to speak it out with others. But the Tzemach Tzedek then explains, what does it mean to speak it out with others? It's very important here. This is what he says. It's not just about talking. It's about being received with full empathy. Because technically you could go stand in the corner and say your problem, and you've spoken it out. You've gotten it out. But the Tzemach Tzedek says, la'acherim, to others, means people who are nominally others. They're only others in as much as they don't have the same body as you. But emotionally, they're completely bonded to you. They are not only sympathetic to you, they are empathetic. They feel, like it says, shemargishemes inyane. They feel your issue. It's a famous story. The Rebbe told this story many times, that the Rebbe Maharash, the fourth Rebbe of Chabad, the Tzemach Tzedek's son, one time two of his sons were playing, the Rebbe Rashab and the Razah. So the Rebbe Rashab was his future successor. He was the younger of the two brothers. And the Razah, Reb Zalman Aaron, was the older. And they were playing, some kids play cops and robbers. These were Rebbe Shekinda. They were playing Rebbe and Chassid. So the older brother, of course, tells the younger brother, you be the Chassid, I'll be the Rebbe. So the younger brother comes into Yechidus, to a private audience, and he says, Rebbe, I need a tikkun. I need spiritual rectification. Okay, what did you do wrong? He says, I ate nuts on Shabbos. Pure little kid. That was the worst sin he could think of, right? Well, you're thinking, what is even eating nuts on Shabbos? Well, in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, it says because of the shells that it's like sorting on Shabbos, which is one of the 39 forms of labor. And anyway, so he says, I ate nuts on Shabbos. So the older brother, pretending to be the Rebbe, says, okay, your tikkun is whenever you daven, you should look in a siddur. When you should pray, when you pray, you should look in the words of the prayer book. Don't pray by heart, by memorization. So the younger brother says, du bist kein Rebbe nicht. You're not a Rebbe. So the older brother says, what do you say? What do you mean I'm not a Rebbe? He says, weil a Rebbe fahre entweder darf geben krechts. Because a Rebbe, before he answers, has to sigh. You didn't sigh, so you're not a Rebbe. Speaking it out to others doesn't just mean speaking. It means having the experience of being received, fully received, with empathy. So you have to be very careful who you share with. Sometimes when we assume that our healing requires speech, we end up speaking to the wrong people in the wrong places, and we become further victimized. We get hurt. I mean, I started off this whole evening telling you the Buddy Hackett joke about the duck, about the unilateral vulnerability, which is often then a source of shame and isolation. So if you share with the wrong person or in the wrong setting, not only is it not healing, it can exacerbate the problem. Sharing is productive in as much as it is the activity that facilitates the experience of being received with empathy. I'm going to repeat that. Verbally sharing your problems with another person is only healing in as much as it is the activity which facilitates the experience of being received with full empathy. So it's actually the being received with full empathy that is healing. And now I'm going to make myself sound like a liar because I told you I know nothing about the world of psychology and therapy. I'm going to say one thing, but please believe me when I tell you I'm a dilettante, and I can quote almost from any discipline, but my knowledge is like super like shallow. So just I'm going to quote Carl Rogers, and you're going to think, well, this guy must know psychology. I can quote philosophers too. It doesn't mean that I studied any of them. Okay, I have one line. Okay, but this line is very important. Carl Rogers was an American psychologist, considered one of the fathers of modern psychotherapy. So he actually made a very astounding observation, which is that the modality of therapy is almost irrelevant, or perhaps entirely irrelevant. What is most important is the patient-doctor relationship. So, and he had a term for this, which was unconditional positive regard. So he said that when the patient experiences the doctor's unconditional positive regard, that is more of a determinant factor of healing than the therapeutic approach that's used. So this is very much corroborated by, or it corroborates, I should better say, what we know from this Hayom Yom from Chaf Hey Sivan, that the healing is the experience of being received empathetically. Now, I will add something to this, which is perhaps my own personal interpretation, and that is, you said that you've had the experience of talking through your problems and experiencing relief, and it doesn't sound like you were talking about sharing it with another person. It was more just like processing it yourself. I will say this, and this is perhaps wrong because I don't have a source for this, but it's my intuition that tells me this. If you've experienced empathy, being received empathetically by another person, such as people who are raised by emotionally intelligent parents. I'm going to repeat that 3 times. People who are raised by emotionally intelligent parents. People who are raised by emotionally intelligent parents have a basis for knowing what being received empathetically feels like. Because of that basis, they are able to self-administer empathy. In other words, the previous caller was talking about shame and guilt that he feels during his recovery process. So some people have an internal parental voice that is shaming and condemning. Other people have an internal parental voice that is empathetic. When you can receive yourself with empathy, that can also be very healing. And that may be the experience that you're describing when you're saying sometimes just talking it out, even without another person, but just even as internal dialogue can be healing. If you've had, again, just my theory, I may be wrong, if you've had the experience of being received with full empathy by another person, then when needed, you can administer that to yourself, and it can be extremely healing. Okay, that's my answer to that. You with me still?
Yes,
okay.
I'm here.
Okay, so you said you had your own theories. Did I overlap with any of your own theories?
Yeah, one of the conclusions I'm walking away with is that when it says, in quotations, because I don't have the actual verse, but like when it says that we should like avoid anger, depression, or some of these emotions, perhaps the way that I can interpret that is by expressing it and dealing with it, in the second form if the second form is able to mitigate those feelings, then that's a valid form. That's a valid method of dealing with those negative feelings.
Okay. Yeah. I would agree with that. Okay. And I'm sure there are many other explanations as well, but this is just to get us to this chapter of an ongoing story. So, it's an ongoing story. It's an ongoing journey of healing and discovery. But, okay, I think we've got enough to get closure, at least for tonight's Verbringen. I'm calling it a Verbringen. I'm choosing to call it a Verbringen. So that was great. That was an awesome question. We'd like to extend special thanks to Mendel Simon and 9x9 Tech for powering this call-in show and making it possible for us to connect with our amazing audience. 9x9 Tech offers a one-stop service for all your communication needs, along with personalized tech solutions catered specifically towards your business. Visit 9x9tech.com today. That's 9x9tech. I'm going to spell the tech. TECH.com. Thank you, Mendel and the team, for your incredible support. Hey, this is Shais Taub. You were just watching a clip from this class. If you want to get the full context, the full class that this clip that you just watched was from, you watch right here. Click right here.